To set up our scene in Harmony, there's a few different ways that we can go about this and think about how we're going to construct it. So right now, if I look at my scene, I have a bunch of clouds. Just make it a little bit bigger so we can see. 3 layers of clouds, 3 trees, 2 houses, 2 people, ground, and a color card which gives me my sky blue. Now within this scene, I've created the artwork to scale so that let me turn off a couple trees here so we can see. So we have a tall person and a short person. The trees are bigger than the people, bigger than the houses. The houses are bigger than the people. Now, when you are creating artwork for your scene, you have a couple of different options. One, you can make your artwork small and then scale it in space as it moves through. The other option is to draw or create all of your artwork at the relative actual scale it should be to each other, so that as you move things within space to set your scene, that they will scale appropriately. Because there's 2 different ways that we're able to move our artwork within our scene. Now, right here I have all of my different layers. And once we get our scene set, then we're going to add in the camera and show how we're able to do camera pans, zooms, and cuts all within our Harmony timeline. Now, the view that I want to work with here is going to be my top view. Now, if top view doesn't show on your list, you click on the plus up at your top window and you'll choose top. And that pulls up the top view. Now, the top view shows you all of your layers. It shows you the color card. By default, it pushed the color card to the back of my scene, and all of my other artwork layers are now existing on this one single plane. So the order that they are stacking on top of each other in space is organized currently by their layer order. All right, did everyone find the plus button to get to top? Again, to add in top, click plus, go down the list, you'll see top there. You choose that, it brings top into your window. Now, we can add top to any of the other windows. If you click on any of them, you will see you have an option to add anywhere. This is often default, it's going to show up here. Now, if you have a bigger screen or multiple displays, you could certainly open it up in a different space as you're working in it, and that is totally fine. But in my limited display here, this is the option I'll have to use. Now, within this view, what we want to do is to start pushing things back in space to set our scene. So if I were to, say, grab one of the trees, so if I go and grab one of the trees and want to move that tree in space, then what's going to happen, the tree layer turned on, well, see how the tree is in front of the person. If I take the tree and push it back, I can push it back using the translate tool. Now, the translate tool, that works, but if you notice, my ground now is behind or in front of the tree. So the tree just dropped behind my ground that everyone's standing on. So that's not quite right. So we're going to have to push the ground back. So
how did you move it?
If you're looking for your animation tools and they're not showing up across the top, right click up in the toolbar area and choose Advanced Animation, and that gives you your Advanced Animation tools. So the translate tool pushes it back. So that means I now want to push the ground back. So I'll try and maybe push the ground so it's pretty close to the sky. So I can click on it in my layer timeline area. I can also click on it in my little thumbnail view over here. So I can click on the ground and push it back. And you'll see as if I go beyond the sky, it disappears because the sky is that color card. But also, the ground is shrinking. As I push it back, we can see how it's shrinking, shrinking, shrinking. Now, there are some things like my trees, my houses, my people, when I push them back in space, I probably do want them to scale down as they move further away from each other. But there's a cool tool built into Harmony called Maintain Size. So now I can push the ground back, and now it's back, but it didn't scale it. So if you draw an object, sometimes you may reposition it using Maintain Size so you can just push it back because you don't want it to start getting smaller, like the ground. So now we can see that tree. Go find tree 3 over here and push that back. Well, I don't want to use Maintain Size. Now the tree, though, I do want to scale, so I'll push that back. And we can see how it's shrinking as it goes back in space. I can go grab one of my other trees, push that. I can move it around and adjust its position. I can grab my third tree and push that back. I can grab a house. You could nestle the house between the two trees. I'm going to grab the front green tree. Now you'll notice I can move it X and Y, X horizontal and Z when I'm in the top view. When I'm in the camera view, the translate tool allows me to move it X and Y, but I can't move Z. So I can't change its space, but I can now change where is it occurring. So in both the top view and the camera view, we do have an option for moving it on the x-axis, but then the camera view does the y-axis as well, and the top view will do the z-axis. We also have, if you want, we have access to a side view. So if I choose a layer, I can now move it x or y and z. So if I go up here, now when I go back to camera view, we should see that the person is now floating up in the air. So we do have these different views. If you've worked in 3D software before, you may be accustomed to how changing views does give you the ability to precisely line your elements up. As I'm working with this now, my sky, where I just put in the color card because I knew I wasn't going to paint anything, just solid color, it defaulted it way back there, but I'm going to just push it further back so I have more room, because I pushed some layers back. Now I want to push the ground back a little bit more with Maintain Size, turn back on. Go back to translate. That now gives me some space so I can start moving my clouds back. So if I look where my clouds are now, because I want the clouds to float in the background, and you'll see as I push each cloud back how they nicely shrink in space. And if you also pay attention, as they go back, as it comes forward, you'll see how the cloud is higher in the sky. And as it moves further back in space, it becomes lower. So what we're really doing is we're working with perspective, so that things, as they shrink, they move down along that vertical axis. So it helps us to see that sense of space occurring. And now it's also really, and you can see where one of my clouds, two of my clouds are in front of the trees, because we can see the order of where the layers are in space in the little thumbnails next to my top view cone. So to move these trees, I need to pull them in front of the clouds, because my clouds are low, but I don't want the clouds that low. Now I can set this house in front, I'm going to leave it off to the side here for a moment because I want to push my people around a little bit. So I'll take the tall guy, or no, that's the short guy. Grab my tall guy, and I can push him back so he's between the trees. And we'll fly a camera in a moment to see that spatial relationship happening. So we've added a window to the house, and you can see how we're seeing through that. If I turn off Lightbox, we'll see more of what the scene is. Because, I mean, the nice part in Lightbox is it makes every layer transparent so we can start to see all the layers that's not there. But right now I can see through that. Now what I want to do with this house is I am going to modify its position so it completely fills the camera. So it's creating the view that we're kind of, well, no, it's got to go a little more. Now it's filling the whole frame. So it's creating the view that we are looking out of the window. So apparently I should have made it a little smaller, but it'll work. Just for ease, I'm going to extend my layers out. So now my layers have all extended out so that I can start doing a little bit of animation within it. So what I want to do is to take the first person here, which this person has not changed. They are on the original focal plane with it. So they don't have, they're not back in space, they're not forward in space, they're in that original spot. Now I'm going to have this person move their way across the frame, and at this point we can see that animation is turned on. So if I take that character and move them across the frame, we'll see that that person is moving across the frame. I'm going to grab the other person that is starting behind the tree. And what they're going to do is do a little jump out and peek their head out. I'm going to watch this person. And what I want to do is to insert a keyframe here because I want them to wait. And now they're going to quickly move back as they're hiding behind the tree. So they snuck out to watch that person. Now they move back. So this whole scene is taking place while we are inside looking out this window. But if I take this house and want to animate the scene, so I want to change my view of, instead of looking through the window, I want to now move the camera closer to the action that's taking place. To do that, we need to introduce a new element, something we haven't done before, and that is the camera. Now, the camera is really easy to add. Click on the plus. Right down the list, right above color card is camera. Choose that. Now the camera by itself doesn't do anything. And I can double click on the camera layer. I can look at details on the camera and see, okay, that's not really giving me a whole lot of information. But if we add a control peg to this camera, so I clicked on the add peg icon while the camera layer was selected, and in doing so, it added this peg. Warning when you're working with cameras, you are allowed one camera per scene. Some people have added cameras to grouped object layers, and then they add a second camera to their scene, even a third camera to their scene, and then they start animating things, and the end result is visual gibberish because the software doesn't know what to do when there's multiple cameras on a scene. So while we could do live action studio video with multiple cameras, in our software we cannot. So we are allowed one camera. Now the camera movements that we can do, we can pan and zoom, but we can't rotate the camera in 3D. We can only move it in and out. We can spin it along the z-axis so it will rotate the whole frame, giving kind of a earthquake effect. We can look at that, but we can't rotate it, making our layers rotate within 3D. That we can't do in Harmony Essentials. You have to upgrade to Harmony Premium for that capability, which is kind of annoying. In the camera and want to work with the camera, we are going to be adding keyframes not to the camera but to the peg layer. And we will be revisiting peg layers when we look at more complex characters. When your character is composed of 10, 20, 30, 40 separate layers, you will want a master peg, one peg that you use for moving or positioning that character around your scene. The same way that I move these people, they're only a single layer, so I don't really need a peg, but if they're composed of multiple layers, the ideal way of moving them would be to have one master peg that I use to control their primary position. So like when we did the walk cycles, the reposition peg layer that we added, that's a good way of doing it. So on the camera now, I am going to hit F6. That's my starting keyframe for the camera. Now, after a few frames, I'm going to want it to break out and start moving in, so I'll go in slowly, so hit F6 again. Now, with the camera peg layer selected, I am going to fly that camera until we go and break through the window. And you'll see that now my camera is past the window, and what I see on my scene has changed quite dramatically. And now the people are moving within that scene. And as that is happening, now I am going to cut from here over to the close red guy. So I'm going to hit F6 and reposition my camera. Now, as it moves in, I want to now pull it down, thinking about headroom. But I don't want to animate that whole camera movement. And this is where we can change our keyframe from a motion keyframe to a stop motion keyframe. And the little black line connecting the keyframes disappears, and now you can see how it automatically cuts to that new keyframe position. So once again, if I want to set my position, hit F6. Now I'm going to recenter the camera, push it in so that we're zoomed in close up on this person, but I don't want to animate that. I want to jump it. So if I want to do that cut, select the start of that keyframe section and switch it to stop motion. By default, every time you add a keyframe, you're adding a motion keyframe, so it tweens or animates that movement. So if I play back my scene, I go through the window, and then the scene unfolds, and now I jump, I'm zoomed in. He moves across again, I jump, I zoom in, and now he works his way off the set. All right. So adding to my scene with my camera peg selected, I'm going to just hit F6 to add in a new keyframe for that. And what I want to do with the camera is I want to pull the camera over a little bit. Pulled the camera over a little bit. Now I'm going to add in a few frames. Now what we can do with this is if I want to add in that camera shake, is I can just add in a little bit of rotation, and we can see very quickly I can add in rotation. Now if I snap it back even more dramatically in the other direction, now it causes that very dramatic camera movement. If I hit play to watch it, we can see how it happens fast. And as we do something like this, we might want to also push in and out. So I can push in as well, and on one of these other keyframes, I can pull it out. So you're getting a lot of movement. So we can add in that camera shake. Now in Harmony Premium, there is a camera shake or earthquake effect that you can just add, and it will dynamically add that in for you, but that does not exist in Essentials. As I'm doing this, sometimes creating this effect works better I don't want to go quite that far. But what works better is to do it as a stop motion keyframe, so it now jumps. So we have that jumping effect, and we can try and see how that works with a couple jumps. So as you start creating your different effects, you can figure out what does or doesn't work effectively for you as you are trying things out. So now full speed. Having a combination of both stop motion and motion keyframes to create that camera movement, that camera shake, allows you to have a little richer experience. Now perhaps after this earthquake is done, I'm going to go to this person here, and I'm going to add a keyframe to this person and decide that they are going to fall over. Now I want to rotate them from their feet, so I will move their pivot point. Remembering we can move pivot points using the rotate tool. So now as I do that, now I can knock this person over, so we can see they fall over. And what we might want to do is create just a little bit of bounce, so that they bounce just a little bit when they hit the ground, just for dramatic effect. So now watching the earthquake take effect, and we see how they fall over.